Hey everybody, this is Stu Smith and Jeff Nichols, and we are doing another tactical fitness report with the series of what body type prepares you for buds. And this one is specifically the combatives athlete. So we're going to talk about wrestling. Who else? We got boxing, boxing in there. Judo, jiu-jitsu, pretty martial arts.
Right. Yeah. Krav Maga. Like we could, again, but the caveat to this, and we literally just said this, was that this is not, these are not casually doing these. We'll say that. Right. These are sports you grew up doing, how long? I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Don't know. But it's not somebody that's like, oh, I'm going to pick up jujitsu and do it for a season and inherit the traits that we're about to really go over.
Right.
So
this is what you did every day after school.
Yeah.
Or at least during a season of wrestling or whatever, maybe the summer during boxing or whatever. But
yeah, for sure. Like, I'm from Iowa, so it's like basically from this time, well, actually not, just a little bit before now. So 1st of October, Kill Cliff, all the way through New Year's is basically the wrestling season. It's a winter sport now.
Right.
So that's, I since I was a child, that's a component of basically from 5th grade on, I wrestled. Yeah. So a lot of guys I know they grew up wrestling before they were even in school.
Yeah.
So
yeah. That's awesome. So let's start it off. We'll do the strengths and we'll go the intangible strengths first.
Got it. Yeah.
I think, as I wrestled 3 years, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, and then it was the best thing ever because my high school started a powerlifting team right during wrestling season. And I said, I'm in the gym, coach.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my
What weight did you wrestle?
I was 158 in high school. So I was 9th, 10th grade.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but then by the time I graduated, because I was on the powerlifting team after that, I weighed about 210. Yeah. So that was
it's funny. My son will be 11 in February. He's 5 foot and he weighs 98 pounds right now. He's got super long femurs. He's bigger than me now than when I was a junior in high school.
Right.
Bananas. Right.
It's
a bit of a transformation. So
wow.
Yeah. I always wrestled 103. And I remember I had to weigh, because it was a morning weigh-in for the meet. I had to eat breakfast. And I had, we go to school. We had to wear dress clothes. It was a wrestling meet day, collared shirt, slacks. And I had these heavy, like Doc Marten dress shoes. I had to weigh in after breakfast wearing all of them just to make weight because I didn't weigh 103 pounds.
Oh, man.
I had to weigh at least 93. I had to weigh at least 93 pounds. So I remember 1 or 2 times where I'd just be like chugging water, get on the scale, not heavy enough, chug water, get on the scale. And that's with clothes on. And that was all the way through my junior year. And I finally broke 103 pounds. So
holy crap!
Not all is lost, folks.
Yeah, no kidding, man. You are massive now.
Yeah. So I'm trying to make up for it. I'm overcompensating. But yeah, no. So like those intangibles, I think that the stereotype that Stu and I we've said this probably a number of times is the combatives world is the almost perfect example of just being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
Whether it hurts.
Yeah, whether it's the training or in like the crazy side of, for those of us that weren't on the other side of me, right? They had to cut weight. They had to go through that really tough, emotional, stressful grind. To be completely honest with you, there's 2 things I've never done, and I'm hesitant to like prescribe them. And I mean, I've never had to cut a lot of weight. Never had to.
I never did either.
And in the same context, I've never done a very, very strict ketogenic diet in order to do that.
Yeah.
But everything else, for the most part, I've tried. So, but that's where, that's the intangible I look at. I go, these athletes get the hell kicked out of them every day, and they work. The work is there.
Yeah.
And it's there.
And a lot of them are doing this with no fuel. So I think one of the greatest, sayings, or I guess we could call it a pseudo definition of what mental toughness is finding the fuel when the tank is empty.
Yep.
And these athletes who are trying to make weight do that, especially a week before the big meet or whatever. I mean, they are running on empty, still working it, still
Yep.
pushing it. And there's a mental toughness to that, like I said, I'm not recommending people do this as a way to build mental toughness, but
Yep.
it's there. If you love doing these sports and that's part of your thing, it just know that it is going to help you for the rest of your life be tough as hell.
Yeah. And we're not purposely omitting like taekwondo and these sort of things either.
Yeah.
But understand, and here's me being objective. There's a big difference between doing competitive taekwondo and like what they refer to in that community as the belt factory, where you just show up for a couple of weeks, you get a belt, you stick around for another 6 weeks, you get another belt. Like a real competitive. It's like if someone says, yeah, man, I'm a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from Master Shmuckatelli. It's a big difference between that guy and someone's like, hey, man, I'm working on my brown belt in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Right.
Big difference.
Yeah. In Brazil.
Yeah, big difference, right?
Big difference.
I mean, when you see a guy that's actually working into the Gracie camp, for an example, that gets his black belt, like for real, gets his black belt given to by Hoist Gracie or Rickson, that guy's legit.
Yeah.
Or woman.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, we're not, because on those intangibles that I'm looking, the reason why I mentioned taekwondo and karate and those things is because the discipline in those real taekwondo and karate organizations, man, because I've seen behind the curtain on one of them. There's a really competitive karate gym in Nashville that I go to, and oh boy, what a difference that it is! Really cool watching those young kids all the way to adults train in that environment, because it's severe. It's
you
a
throw
severe
that
school.
in there, absolutely that,
Yeah.
and then you start introducing kickboxing into your training and Muay Thai, all that stuff. I mean, if you do it as your sport. These are the intangibles that you're bringing. If you're doing it once a week,
it's not bad to do it.
Not a bad thing. You learn some techniques, but this is you're going to build up a lot more intangibles and tangible strengths going into your next profession, if you so choose to do this, by going into it hardcore and just making it part of your life. So
yeah, but I'm going to get to a little bit more my thoughts on the programming side of it here in a bit. But there's something really uniquely inherent about these combative sports as far as programming is concerned that tend to be simplified in my mind, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, and again, one of the other, we got mental toughness, right? That's one of the intangibles. We got discipline, which is it's hard to determine analytically, this is how much mental toughness you get. This is how much determination you got. Those are discipline. But what I'm seeing is because it's hard to measure. But then on the tangible side, I guess it's with these combative sports. Now there's some variety in them, but if we're going to talk strength, power, endurance, and all those sort of things, you just got that wrapped all into these sports.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? It's a byproduct of training in these environments for an extended period of time. You will absolutely get strong. You will absolutely gain power. You will absolutely get endurance.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And it's just a byproduct of it, because constantly tugging on someone while they're fighting you, it's so much eccentric loading constantly, and it's dynamic. So we have to be powerful. And then there are minutes.
Yeah.
Imagine sprinting as hard as you can for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
That's what you end up getting in wrestling sometimes. Regularly.
Yeah, that's hardcore, man. I would say this too about the intangibles too. I mean, even though these are fairly individual sports, you are busting your ass for your team. I mean, you are spitting in a cup, trying to lose weight, cutting water. I mean, just really, that week before the big meet for your team, so there is a teamwork aspect to these that a lot of people don't realize. that I'm a big fan of. They're very
Yeah.
good team players, even though they're individuals. You know, they win and lose as a team, dual meets and things like that.
I think probably for the same reason as why the folks that you know, if and when you graduate buds or SFAS or PJ, the people you went through that with, and even so, like Stu and I didn't go through buds together, but we went through buds, the same buds.
Yeah.
And so you forge that sort of that brotherhood. That same brotherhood exists in wrestlers.
Sure.
Right? If I find a wrestler that I get to know, I'm like, holy shit, like you instantly have that rapport built because you kind of, you know, in the back of your head what that person is capable of in terms of enduring discomfort or commitment, right? Or determination, things we're talking about. And that's where the team isn't just who you're with. It's like everyone that graduates buds, like I have instant rapport with, from the youngest to the oldest. Yeah. I have it, and I always will.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, they're good. They're able to be coached very well because the cool thing about wrestling is you're learning something new every week.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have, you know, negative feedback. You do something wrong, you got to do it right. You know, and it's one of those sports where the saying, you know, you don't practice it till you get it right. You know, you practice it till you can't get it wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it comes in handy because it's repetition. And that's, you know, buds is a lot like that as well.
You know, and it's not that other sports like baseball and football and those sort of things, it's not that it's not that there's not an aspect of humility to them. But when you're trying to hit a ball that's 97 miles an hour, that's different humility when you have somebody that's your same size, same shape, everything, manhandling you. That's humility. You know what I mean? Like I've unfortunately or fortunately, I've caught somebody throwing 97 miles an hour. And I've also had to hit off that person or tried to.
That hurts.
It's a different world. But wrestling somebody that is, again, like even when I go back to the University of Iowa every year, and I'll be going back this winter to spend some time with them, like I'll just for me and just to kind of give them a different look because I'm bigger and stronger, I'll wrestle some of the guys that are smaller. Mm-hmm. They'll whoop my ass. I'll put up a fight, but I enjoy having to really fight off somebody with great talent.
Yeah.
So I provide them a service. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I just that unique sort of, hey, I'm humble enough to get my ass kicked. I appreciate that. It's weird. It's a little bit narcissistic maybe, but I enjoy it because I love the sports.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's really cool. So, you know, like we said before we started this whole thing, these combative athletes, and, you know, we can focus on wrestling as a main one, but I think all of them kind of bring, you know, the tangible strengths are just innumerable, right? And I'm going to sum this up real quickly and say that I think these athletes bring everything to the table to make it through buds if, and this is the big if, they can swim.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing.
I would 100% agree with that statement.
Yeah.
And so let's create this hypothetical person shortly here. Like let's say someone that's listening to this is 16 or 15 years old. And that's why Stu and I say, hey, get into jiu-jitsu, get into swimming, get into swimming, get involved in these things, because the longer you do it and the longer you do these variety of training modalities, it is my belief that the closer you're going to get to being, like, without a doubt, physically ready.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right?
Absolutely.
And I will say, without a doubt, what I have seen, and I know what Stu has seen in the buds environment, wrestlers, when I say wrestlers, I also mean jiu-jitsu and these guys, we didn't struggle. It was tough. No, don't get me wrong. Buds is a kick in the butt, no question. But I didn't struggle with anything. It doesn't mean it wasn't hard. It doesn't mean it wasn't the hardest thing I've ever done. But at no point did I go, oh, my God, I can't finish this, or I don't think I can do it. At no point. And I attribute that 100% to growing up wrestling and swimming.
Right. You know what? And let me share this with you, because here's what I have seen on the two side of the equation. You know, these wrestlers who are trying to get two buds, and they have to take that test. 500-yard swim, pull-up, push-up, sit-ups, mile-and-a-half run, right? And they can crush pull-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, mile-and-a-half run. No problem. And let's say they know how to do the combat swimmer stroke, but they're not good at it. I have seen wrestlers take 18 strokes to get across the pool doing the combat swimmer stroke, right? And where the guy next to him is doing 5, right? Every length, right? Which would be 20 lengths in a 25-yard pool. By the time that wrestler gets out, he's probably going to swim, let's say he swims a 9:30, which is pretty good, right? But even the wrestler is going to be tired after doing that swim if he's not used to doing that swim. And his regular pull-up, push-up, sit-up scores and run are significantly deteriorated because he was just not efficient enough in the pool. That's what I typically see. And they're cardio animals, so that they can suck it up and they're going to overwork in the pool. But if you can get a wrestler to swim efficiently so he's not killing himself in the pool, he's going to crush the rest of that PST and just move on to the next step and be, next step to get through the training.
Yeah. Because what wrestlers, if any of you've been wrestling, you've heard this term or this word probably used more than anything else. Hips, 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 hips. Jiu-jitsu is the same thing. You got to control the hips, control the hips.
Yeah.
In the hips of wrestlers and jiu-jitsu athletes and judo, especially judo too, they are so powerful. And if you can transfer that into fin work, because in efficiency, exactly what Stu's saying, game over. Yeah. You will absolutely, you will beat buds. Yeah. You won't survive it. You'll beat it.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's really what we're talking about here.
Yeah. You'll be able to compete in many of the events, not just one or two events like most people, many of the events. And you'll be number one, number 2 in the class. And
your struggle will be this. So I think that there's always struggles throughout buds. It's like someone might struggle with the running or struggle with the swimming or struggle with the O course or struggle with this, that, and the other. Your only struggle as a wrestler that can swim will be what's ever going on inside your head and the fact that it's 27 weeks long. Yeah. It's just every day. It's just like, oh, my God. But that's the thing with wrestlers. Yeah. They've been in the grind.
Yeah. And I will say this, once again, it's not just swimming. It's pool skills too, because what are wrestlers typically? Very lean.
Sink. Yeah.
They're very lean and they're negative. So treading in the water sucks. Yep. Drown proofing is going to suck. Pretty much anything without fins, in the water is going to suck a little bit. So, the one thing that would probably be easier for you is, since you sink, is underwater knot tying, because you just sink down to the bottom, have no problem staying there, holding your breath, tying knots, easy day, come back up. I mean, it doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. It's, it's just not going to crush you. But there are all these little events at Buds that expose weaknesses, and we're just trying to share with you some of the common weaknesses that we have seen wrestlers and combative athletes have.
Yes.
And it bounces around to all athletes really, but these are kind of specific to that combative group. I will say this: wrestlers crush the O course.
Agreed.
Absolutely crush the O course, because that's about the same time as a wrestling match. If you're used to putting out for 5 minutes, it's 6 minutes, and I think the record at Buds is a 4:45 obstacle course time. Pretty sure.
Yeah.
Last name Kaiser, wrestler from Navy named Kaiser, has that. At least he used to, and I did pretty well on that. I remember. It was me and another guy in my Buds class, third phase. We'd go head to head at the very last just to see who's going to win. And if the officers won, we didn't have to get wet. Unless the guys won, they didn't have to get wet. And it was back and forth every week until we were done. And we were always 5 seconds off of each other. 1 week I'd win, 1 week he'd win. And then at the end, he finally got me. He was like 5:15 and I had a 5:20. But that was everything that I could possibly do. And I say, I have no idea how this guy got a 4:45. I mean, it was, I couldn't have done it any more perfect. And I personally couldn't have done it any faster. So he must've just been sprinting his ass off in between those obstacles to do
it. That, and I think the biggest thing with the O course that eats up time is getting up the slide for life and getting on the rope.
Yeah.
And when you get up really efficiently, you figure out like throwing that leg over and roll and get right back up. Then there's those people that kind of get on the rope. And then there was a handful of us that would just literally just run and jump head first, land on the rope. And then that momentum would slide you down. So there was 5 or 6 of us that would literally just run and go, Superman out over.
That's
so
hardcore.
The first person I saw do that was Andy Arabito, who owns Half Face Blades.
Okay.
Absolutely. So he's the guy that in Buds, we'd be driving like on the island. He'd be standing on the box truck up top, and it'd take off, and it'd be going. He'd do a backflip off the truck on the ground. That's Andy. Like that's what he would. He was just lunatic. He'd do double backflip off a 120-foot gas and oil platform in Seal Beach. So that was Andy. He would just always like, fuck it. And he just ran. He landed like a third of the way, grabbed it, had his foot, tucked back and just slid right down and under it. Boom. I was like, whoa.
That's impressive.
So he had the fastest time in our class.
That is hauling.
From like day one.
Wow.
And he was smoking fast.
Damn.
But there was a handful of us that would do that. Like I wasn't quite that severe, but I got to the point I would just throw myself on it.
Right. And
I could slide down. So I wasn't quite leaping that much, but that's the thing with the O course too, is you get guys, in Buds, it's about that commitment. And I think that's where maybe that's intangible, is that you have to be really, really, you can be a little bit wishy-washy in other sports. You can be wishy-washy in baseball. Like, I just love to hit, but I can't stand playing third base or whatever. It's like,
right.
Like football, you're going to play typically one side of the ball, or in high school, you might play both sides of the ball, but you just really want to be the running back or whatever.
Right. Right.
You can't be wishy-washy and be successful in a combat sport. You'll get the hell kicked out of you. I mean, you just will.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it's one of those like immeasurable sort of things happens, is like you just not many people will endure wrestling practice that don't want to be there. Yeah,
that's true.
So, I mean, there are people, of course, it's like, pressure from parents or whatever it may be, but at the same time, that's a whole other argument and discussion. But again, I guess maybe like maybe we get into like the negatives. I think for me that the negative aspect, aside from like, if you can't swim, that's a universal trait. If someone's showing up to Buds and they can't swim very well,
right. It doesn't matter what sport you're in.
It doesn't matter what sport it is. Yeah. And I think like maybe the probably the biggest issue with a wrestler is that it's not even the physical side. It's just you get a lot of wrestlers now, especially because it's kind of, maybe it's what you and I have talked about. Even guys coming into Buds are like, yeah, wrestlers do pretty well. And then they think it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna mosey on through this Buds thing because I wrestled.
Right. Yeah.
And it crushes you.
Yeah. That's not the
attitude. Because it will.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's maybe a bit of a shortfall. Wrestlers as well tend to be a little bit smaller. So not always, and certainly not the case always, but
right.
They tend to be the guys that are 140, 150, 130, and they're just not as strong as they could be.
Right, but they're also pound for pound very strong.
Right, but I'm saying like, and it's not because they're not strong. It's because the grind of wrestling, that training we're talking about, is not the best way to train for Buds. The grind. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like that's where it's like pound for pound, certainly they're as strong as they can. But when you start dealing with logs overhead and a heavy boat and all these sort of things, like we need to get a wrestler to get outside. It's like, listen, you don't need to cut weight. You don't need to exercise portion control.
Right. Yeah. You probably need to go on a weight gain cycle.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a lighter guy.
Yeah.
Just like we would have our cross country runners do. We would say, you need to eat.
Yeah.
Stop by the Chick-fil-A, get yourself a milkshake on the way home.
Yeah.
Just get some extra calories in you.
Yeah.
And let's lift some weights. Get some absolute strength in there, like you said.
Yeah. That's why it was hard for me to kind of articulate, because it's not necessarily a physical issue. It's not really it's kind of a mental issue, but as it ties directly towards the physical, because if you get a wrestler that wrestled 135 or 137 or whatever it is, the weight classes, their whole life, even in college, they're like, well, this is where I'm at. This is where my body's at. Like,
right.
I don't want to gain weight. And so they train, and their mindset is still in that wrestling mode. It's like, well, I can't eat the steak and the potatoes and this. And they're hungry all the time.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because there's a lot of sports that, in fact, you and I talked about it recently, that actually have eating disorders.
Yeah.
You know, they just don't like gaining weight. You know, cross-country runners, big one. I mean, you Google cross-country runners and eating disorders, you're going to find a ton of writing on it. But yeah, wrestlers are in there too. I mean,
that's the conundrum, and you see that all the time. Like, and it's like, and you pointed out to them in a way, go, hey man, like you don't have to make weight here. We need you to get you optimized. You're going to put on 10, 15 pounds, but what's going to be happening is you're going to recover much faster.
Yeah.
You don't have to be in that fog of training stress.
Yeah.
And they're not used to it, because they've equated that fog of training stress as a direct correlation to them being successful in sport. That's it. So it's hard for me to articulate that.
No, that's a really good point.
Super difficult for me to type that out. It would just be super difficult.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you're right. I mean, that is something that I don't think many people consider as they go into, you know, these activities. You know,
that's the same for boxers.
Preparation. Yeah, I mean, weight, anything they got to make weight.
Yep.
Or requires you to be light.
Yep. I don't think there's been any jockeys that made it through buds, but to the point, it's like when you grow up in a sport that has that's even Olympic, not so much Olympic weightlifters, but I could see that might be kind of the issue too. But you know, powerlifters, not so much either. There's weight classes involved in that, but I'm talking like real ones. You got to cut weight and show a lot of caloric restraint.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you get in, if you do it for 10 years, you know, and you're only 20, you know, I mean, that's half your life, that this is how you eat. This is how you train. And so, picking up some new habits can be a challenge. I tell you what, though, it's a fun challenge. You know, I used to love when wrestling season was over and then I had to get ready for football. Yeah. You know, that was the best.
And I think that maybe you kind of already touched on like the solution to that so, you know, growing up in Iowa, I didn't see much of that being an issue where I grew up, especially specifically in the town I grew up in, is because there was an equal emphasis, even growing up in Iowa. It's like, hey, if you're going to wrestle, unless you qualified for the World Juniors or something, you know, you're expected after wrestling season to run track. Yeah. If you wanted to play football, you better have ran track and played baseball. Right. And then, you know, summer's over. August comes around. It's football practice time. If you hope to play football, you better have played baseball, ran track, and wrestled, or played basketball. Something there. Right. And I think that's changed, or it's certainly not here regionally. The expectation here is if you're going to play soccer, you're going to play year round, or the club team isn't going to play you. Yeah. That's how it is here too, and it sucks. And that's not how I grew up at all. And I refuse. Like, it's funny. My son was like, grew up playing baseball here, right? And other sports and golf. And he decided this year, you know, I'm playing lacrosse. Well, he when he was with his mom, ran into his former, you know, my son was 9 at the time. He made the all-star team here. He saw the baseball coach. He's like, hey, why don't you come out and play fall ball? You know, it's a little bit lower stress or whatever, and it's not super. I was like, what do you want to do, Mason? He's like, yeah, I'll try it. So he went out to practice, and the coach pulled his mom aside and I aside, and he's like, yeah, he really needs to work on this and work on this. And I go, fuck, he does. He's 10. He doesn't have to work on shit. He's either going to play or he's not. Yeah. He's like, well, yeah, but if he wants to play at this level, I'm like, what do you mean? He's fucking 9. He's 10. What level are you playing at? Right. The coach just looked at me weird. He's like, well, yeah, but he's not as good as the other kids. I go, I don't give a shit if he's as good as other kids. It's fucking baseball, and he's 10. Exactly. But the coach really couldn't understand where I was coming from. He's like, how could you not want your son to be the best he can. I do, but I also want my son to be 15 and love sports.
Yes.
I don't want my son to be 15 like your son's going to be and hate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely burned out because he's played one sport for 8 years.
So, yeah. So again, I guess that's my last thing too, is like, this isn't just about wrestling, but this is all sports.
Yeah.
Guys, if you're past high school and college and you're in, still be diverse. Like if you're 16 and listening to Stu and I, or 15, even better, or 14, even better, play sports. Now, if there's like, you grew up on a farm, or you really need to help mom and dad with the business, or you live rurally and you can't, fine, don't do it. That's why we're saying you should pick a sport or two, be diverse, rock climbing, go. You can always run. You can do all sorts of stuff. Be as diverse as possible. And here is kind of the transition, I guess, for segue now into training. Okay, well, we're saying all these positives and these sort of things. Well, how do you train an individual that's already doing this? Or is it obsolete? The crazy thing is it almost, if you're playing a sport all year round and it's your nucleus of that sport that you really like, that is wrestling, jiu-jitsu, those sort of things, you're doing that for a big chunk of the year, maybe it's even 6 months of the year. Like, maybe we just got to focus on little things, right? You don't need to change a whole lot. That's the reality of it. We definitely want to get you exposed to resistance exercises.
Yeah.
That's a value. Now, the curveball is this. Let's, for wrestlers specifically, is that, like one of my athletes here is a 2-time state champ. His dad is the command master chief at where I was from.
Cool.
And he didn't have a lot of weight to play with. So it's like, okay, our resistance training is almost power focused the whole time, just because we don't want to do a lot of hypertrophy. So that might be the only sort of catching, is like, well, listen, like I wrestled, someone's like, oh, I wrestled 142 this year, 145. And next year I might wrestle the same weight class, or I might only just move it to 152 or whatever it is. So you might not have a whole lot of weight to play with.
True.
That's the only catch when it comes to training these folks, is that you have to almost become a non-traditional resistance training until you get out.
Yeah. When they're like that and they still have seasons ahead of them, I would even say this, yes, feel some resistance, get a little stronger, things like that. But for me, just add water,
Yes.
Just jump in the pool, into practice, learn how to swim, play around in the water, and then focus on your competition.
Yeah.
And then when you're done, then we can really focus about and not worry about gaining 10 pounds of weight.
Yep. And that's the curveball too, is like wrestling and swimming is the same season.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, what's the solution? The solution that's very, very simple. Club swimming is in the summer.
Yeah. Right.
So, but also you don't need a season to swim, exactly what Stu is saying. So this is one of those, again, be very careful about using my words, but swimming is that activity where you probably could do it every day to some degree and not take away from the sport and not take away from resistance training, as long as you're fueling and refueling.
Yeah.
Like swimming is one of those things, because it's a low gravity impact. It typically is a pretty low nervous system impact, unless you just can't swim.
Yeah.
And it stresses you out a little bit. But swimming is the really great equalizer to get quality training in without beating yourself up too much.
Yeah. And it's a good end of practice event.
Yeah.
When you're done and you're burnt out, it'll cool your body temperature down. You catch that second wind, you go into some aerobic swimming, and you're rolling, and you can practice some technique without really any effort, other than just actually practicing skills.
For sure.
So.
Yep. So I guess the programming question wasn't fully answered, but for a wrestler, jiu-jitsu, the program really is the sport until you hit an off season.
Yes.
And then the focus really needs to be swimming and getting acclimated really to a resistance program. So when your time is up wrestling officially, you're not confined to weight classes, then you're not having to again, you're not having to learn new techniques. You're just developing upon strengths.
Yeah, there you go.
We're trying to, because one thing you can always do in season, one thing you can always, again, there's very few always and evers, but there's one thing you can always do in season, and that's develop skill.
Yeah.
You can always develop that skill of swimming. Let's learn, right?
Right.
You can always develop on motor patterns. We don't have to be heavyweight, but we can learn the back squat in season. It's a motor pattern.
Yeah.
We can learn the side stroke, and that's the beauty. That's really getting a leg up a leg up on the competition.
Yeah.
I
like that.
Skill acquisition can always be acquired off season and in season.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like this one. You know, I for all the 90s when I was, going through or preparing for training and going through training, it was always said back then, man, wrestlers are just killing it here. Right.
Yeah.
And then, lacrosse players got involved and they were really starting to hit it hard in there, so everybody kind of has a good cycle of great stories about certain athletes making it through buds, and they all make it through buds. I've seen, football, powerlifting linemen make it through buds, and, it's possible.
Cheerleader from Ohio State.
There you go.
A buddy of mine did. Yeah.
Hey, man.
So, I mean, and our guys, so we're going to do, so you kind of already prefaced a little bit is, probably the next one we're going to do is the lacrosse and rugby. Geez, my tongue twister here.
Yeah.
Lacrosse and rugby. And then we'll probably do one right after it. And is this never did a sport in their life?
Yeah. You know what?
Those people will make it through too.
I've seen some like that are either surfers or they're skate rats.
Yep.
We had a kid that just rode his bicycle, just was a BMX guy.
Yeah.
That was what he did. He didn't play any sports.
I bet he could just crush running.
He was pretty tough.
So much leg endurance on that. That lactic buffering for those cyclists, man.
Yeah.
So we've got all these things in mind, folks, and we'll get to it, but just understand that we're just giving you an overview. I personally, if I saw a wrestler and I knew that they had some competitive wrestling behind them, years even, it's a pretty safe bet that person is going to probably have they're 100%, like Stu said, they're going to have the physical tools to make it through if they can swim. Yes. And the percentage of wrestlers that make it through is higher than any other group.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just I think it was Stanford that did that study. It was over like 7 or 8 classes kind of thing. And it was, those questions were also in the buds, the one that we broke down in terms of analytics of the shuttle and all those sort of things. They didn't broadcast it, but in that analytics, they asked what they did as sports prior. It's in there. I'm not sure why they didn't put it in there, but it's in the analytics. Right. What sports they were exposed to or did growing up. So, is it a sure thing? Most certainly not. But those intangibles that are hard to measure, it's part of it. Man, it's the same. Like, I think of like, one of the questions is like, did you grow up in a dairy farm in the Midwest? Yes. Like that was my first job. And like, that was cold and that was hard work. That for me, like I look at that and go, milking cows in January in Iowa at 4 a.m. when the sun doesn't rise, you know what I mean? Like that sucks.
Yeah. And we all have those little stories. I worked on a watermelon farm in the middle of the summer in Florida.
Crushing you.
Oh God, that freaking hot and humid and, 12-hour days, picking watermelons and putting them in a truck.
The thing is if Stu and I had truly the magic recipe, we wouldn't be doing this. We certainly wouldn't be doing it for free. Right. Right. We would just publish a book and then just sit back and retire on our, 130-foot yacht in the Mediterranean. We would have solved that riddle. But what we're trying to do is again, we want you guys to be scholars of training, okay, not just consumers. So you can, because what for many of you that make it through BUDS or Special Forces is we want you guys to continue to carry on this information as you become an actual operator so you can get longevity minimize the best you can injuries and those sort of things. It's not just about getting to training. It's a point of education for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing is for the young 18, 19, 20-year-old is to realize they are bringing weakness to the table. And if they don't acknowledge that, it will be exposed within the first few days of buds.
And it's okay. Like, it's okay that you do that, but we can't be naive. Like, I had somebody message me the other day about, oh, hey, what do you think about your training program for PJs? Because the PJ that I talked to, well, he's not really a PJ. They treated him bad and they dropped him because he couldn't get comfortable. Like, everyone's got a goddamn excuse.
Right.
Like, everyone that I know that's ever quit buds, and I mean this, everyone has an excuse. I have yet to meet, and I've met hundreds vicariously or whatever that didn't make it through buds. And every single one of those people have said, well, I wasn't treated fairly, or I got hurt and did this. And it's all a bunch of crap. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it. If you're a good person, they will like give you 50 chances.
Yeah. That is true.
I mean, they will give you chance after chance after chance.
That is true. Now, I have seen guys say, you know what? I realized that it wasn't for me. You know, if you can say that, you know, more power to you, because you know that you know, you went up to bat, you tried, and you realize it wasn't for you. Nothing wrong with that. You know, I mean, that's what it's for. You know, but
and that's you know, nobody likes to admit when they were really made bad mistakes. Nobody, and I get that. That's the human nature of it. Which is why Stu and I are saying, hey, if you're 18 years old, take your time.
Yeah, don't be in a rush.
It's going to be there. And here's the thing. I almost guarantee this. If you're 18 and got a stick up your butt and really want to go to buds, if that stick is still up your butt in 2 years or a year and a half, you'll be faster, stronger, more resilient in every way. Buds will never be easy, but it will be much, much easier for that same person with a year and a half of training behind them in maturity.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Every time.
Yeah.
It will
I mean, I know I absolutely wouldn't have made it at 18 years old. I barely made it through plebe summer at the Naval Academy. I mean, nothing compared to it. You know, I like I said, I thought I was in shape because I was a powerlifting football player, and nothing the military is going to do is hurt me. I was wrong real quick. You know?
Yeah, I was a super freak at 18 because like I said, I graduated high school at like 120 pounds.
Yeah.
And at the end of my freshman year of college, when I turned 18 when I was a 17-year-old freshman in college, and I turned 18 that August when I checked in. I already checked in September to play baseball at college, and then I turned 18. And at the end of my freshman year, I weighed 198 pounds. And that summer, man, I became like, I always put it like this. Like I played a lot of baseball with Japanese and Puerto Rican athletes, and their fundamentals are so much better than Americans.
Yeah.
But they're smaller. Yeah. Right. So I had really, really good sports fundamentals. And then I got the size all of a sudden. I was like, holy shit. I got really strong, really fast because I had this work ethic behind me. Right. From wrestling and just from growing up and whatever way it was. But so that's why that's my point for you all. They're 18 and like, it's not about what's the ideal weight. That's not it at all. It's being patient in this regard will always pay off. Yeah. Always pay off.
Because you're really not through growing at 18 either.
I'm close.
You know, you're not through growing at all. You know, so you got a couple more years to keep growing. But look, I don't want to. Here's the deal though. If you're 18 years old and you are going for sure, I want you to prove me wrong. You know, I am not saying don't do it. You know, I'm just saying just prove me wrong. Right?
Yep.
You know, please do. And tell me. I want you to get back, email me, text me, and say, screw you, Smith.
Yep.
I did it. And I'm 18 years old and I'm at Buds.
Right, like I said, Andy Arabito, who owns Half Space Blades, was 18. And there's one other guy that mows Costa was 17 at Buds. His dad was a senior chief detailer, and he's still active, so I won't mention his name. Crushed Buds. Yeah. Crushed it. So, yeah, you're right. We just are trying to say,
Statistically.
Statistics. We're just going to go off some math. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm just a believer now. But anyway, so that's kind of, that's kind of the wrestler, the combat athlete in a nutshell, I think. I think we've kind of covered that, and you guys are getting the point.
Yeah.
Again, if you're a wrestler, don't start beating your chest yet, because the great equalizer is water and buds. It'll get you, just like it did me. Like I feel like I took on buds the best way I could, and so did Stu, but it still sucks.
Oh yeah.
In a good way. It really sucks, but in a good way. So
yeah.
Again, so I guess we didn't talk about topics. Two things we got to cover. We're going to cover a product that is SEAL owned and operated, and then we're going to talk about stupid questions. So without further ado, like, again, we're going to kind of choose these randomly. So one of the companies that I'm a big fan of, Strikeforce.
Yep.
It's ironically enough, so it comes in a big pump, or it comes in a travel packet. Okay. It comes in different flavors. Big fan. It's caffeine, right? It's just straight flavored caffeine. So the guys here are here in Virginia Beach. It was really kind of one of those things that was born out of necessity, or the teen guys sort of impatience.
Right.
Is like, man, I don't want to, I got to take this or buy this, or this is going to dissolve in my water and it's taking too slow. So the guys were like, well, why don't we just put it in a liquid form and pump, and then boom. Right.
Yeah.
So again, if you're a caffeine drinker, I really do urge you. Again, I don't make any money off of it at all. I'm just supporting a community that I believe in. And if you want to buy it, message me. I'll give you a code that they basically offer up for 20% off.
Yeah.
So
they have a cool Instagram page too.
Yeah, check them out. So this right here is like 100 servings. It comes out to be like $30, which is like
what's a pump in
It's 80 milligrams, which is a Red Bull. Red Bull 74. Okay. So a single pump of that, and you put it big in. You put it in. What I do is I put it in a lot of water.
Right. So
I get more hydration out of those sort of things. I'm a big, huge. I mean, I can't speak volumes enough about it, because now I like shit. Monster sends me product for free, and I like a variety. Kill Cliff, I like. Right. I like other things too, but this is just one of the things, because I travel with the packets. I'm such a huge fan of it, just because it's there for me.
Cool.
And but if you want a code, it's SF Pro 20. If you want, I'll put it in the message block as well. But
sure.
SF Pro 20, you'll get you 20% off, and of all their different products. And check them out on Instagram. They're good dudes, and just want to support the community that's given Stu and I so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to think of a stupid question of the week.
I got one.
Oh, okay, go for it, because I got one, but I can't remember what it was.
And this is super short, because the question got asked on our Facebook feed about, we were doing the one on the endurance runner.
Okay. Right,
the first one we did that with the runner. The question was, hey Jeff, how do I get more running endurance? That's I'm not even paraphrasing. That was it. Hey Jeff, how do I get more running endurance? Yeah. And he had commented before, like crazy, like just off the wall shit. Like the guy's like, hey, will you? And I think he's being serious. He's like, hey, can you do a video on your tattoos? Hey, can you do a video on how to take care of a beard? Like, this is like fanboy fucking creepy level 10. Yeah. So if he shows up at my house, again, because the castle doctrine isn't enacted, I'll have to invite him in before I shoot him in the face. Because I can't shoot him in the face outside, because you can't kill anybody for protecting property in the United States. Not in Virginia, you can't. Right. So here's the thing, guys, I'm not trying to discourage you from asking us questions. But when you show a total disregard of finding information yourself, especially in a video that talks specifically about endurance athletes, and you ask a stupid fucking question like, how do I get more running endurance? Like, that's just, you're not going to get a response other than you're a dipshit. That's going to be my response.
Yeah, you need to be a little more specific.
Yeah.
You know, like say, hey, I've been working on my running endurance. It's not really working. Do you have a sample workout? For instance, that I could do?
Yep.
Like, yeah, take a look at this.
Yep.
Try this for a day.
Typically, there's no I guess my point too is there's no bad question. Really, there's no stupid. It's how you structure it.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, again, Stu already laid it out for it. If you're having trouble with something, saying, hey, I'm having difficulty improving my endurance. Like, is it as simple as just running more often, or should I be following a particular plan? Man, you'll get my time. You absolutely will.
Yep.
So, anyways, that's my stupid question of the week.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, because I get those a lot. Hey, how do I get stronger?
Yeah,
that's a good one. So,
anyway, so yeah, we'll do this again. We'll get the next one will be probably like lacrosse.
Yeah, let's do lacrosse, rugby, soccer. We'll mix them all in together because they're all about the same kind of running base. Some differences, obviously, with skills.
A lot of interval. We could probably, honestly, that's one of those fine lines where like we kind of weren't quite sure where to put boxers. In the same way, I'm not quite sure where to put a basketball player too, because their endurance is great, their power development is exceptional, and their eccentric loading, like, but the shortfall again is like we say basketball, instantly we think of like the 6'11" LeBron James or whatever, 6'10",
right?
Like that's a little bit different, right? But we're talking purely the physiology of what basketball is: sprint, stop, go. Sprint, stop, up, down. It's crazy. Like, when's the last time you saw?
What do they run, like 5-6 miles in a game?
It's
something
bananas.
like that, if you added it up.
It's silly. And you ever seen, now there are exceptions to this, like old Shaq or young Shaq, a basketball player that probably could lose a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
There aren't many of them.
Yeah. No. Yeah,
it's indicative of that sport. And I bet those guys, the caloric intake of LeBron James, I bet it's exceptionally high.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
It's just off of his body mass and the effort, the work he puts in. I bet he is surely in excess of 4,000 calories.
Easily. If you think about what they're doing, running back and forth, it's not much different than swimming athletes, except for they just have gravity to it, because they're just running laps, in a pool, or on a court versus swimming them in a pool. So they get all the impact forces and, agility, foot speed, all that stuff that swimmers don't. But
I think that, and that's, so you run into the same issues. I think the statistic I remember asking one of the NBA teams I was working with was like, what's the most common injury in the NFL, or I'm sorry, in the NBA? And it's foot and ankle injuries. And I think that's the same in soccer. And it's not because they're kicking the ball.
Right. It's usually because they're landing on somebody else's foot.
Constant cutting and changing. And I think that's also the case if I were to guess, it's probably very likely that that's the case in lacrosse as well.
Yeah. Rugby too. I mean, I don't know how many. I have an ankle surgery because of football and rugby.
Yeah. Dancers' feet, man. I just get mangled toes too.
Yeah.
Just crushed. So.
All right. So that's our next one.
Fall. Yep.
That's our next one. That'll be a fun one. So
keep coming with the stupid questions so we can continue to be entertained.
Yeah.
And so can you all. So appreciate the support, guys.
All right, Jeff. Thank you much.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
We'll see you.